I just can't get over listening to the Charlie Kirk Ben Burgess debate. How often Charlie Kirk says, "Actually, what I'm really for is strong families." Like
the right is constantly talking about this, right? They're constantly talking about all of these people. It's about the families. It's about the families. It's about the families.
Except get to work and go serve your boss.
Until it's not about the families. Here's Joe Rogan talking about. Now, if you remember the last call, the call that we just had, part of what he said was beneficial about paid parental, in his instance, paternity leave, was that he could support his the mother of his child. Not just because she was recovering from childbirth, although that was part of it, but also in terms of like, it's hard to be the primary caregiver of a tiny baby. It's hard.
I don't know if you know this, but they can't be left alone.
They can't be left alone. They
don't really help themselves.
Yeah.
If you are in a rarefied group of people, your child sleeps through the night. But for most people, your child does not. And there is no greater sort of like torture than going through prolonged periods of time without being able to sleep. But it also has to do with developing a relationship with the child. Not everybody can afford a night nurse to make sure that you get sleep. Not everybody can afford to just sort of like, well, I'm only going to work 2 hours today and go home and spend like the day with my kid. And it's also not like, when your kid starts to be like 6 or 7 and you come home, you're like, what was your day like today? And they can actually tell you. But prior to that, you need to have experience with the child. Otherwise, you just show up and all of a sudden, the child goes to sleep at 7 o'clock. You come home from work, the kid's asleep. And that's it. I had 20 minutes with my baby today.
You value that? A soy boy you are.
Well, I'm not saying this is me. For me, I was, if they're asleep, I'm going to come home. That's great.
Awesome.
But
no bonding time for me.
I say all that because on the right, in the right podcast sphere, to get the clicks, you've got to apparently say that fathers don't need time with their children to take time for paternity leave. Here is Joe Rogan and Bridget Phetasy. Don't know her shit.
I'm sure she pronounces it just like that.
I'm sure it's a Phetasy. Ostensibly talking about paternity leave, but I guess this is maybe a way of mocking the fact that Pete Buttigieg is married to a man and they're both dads.
Well, they try to make this about Pete Buttigieg, but they can't help but make it about paternity leave as a whole. As if they're criticizing Buttigieg for not, getting to the ports and, organizing things himself.
Let's see this.
What's crazy is that Pete Buttigieg during this whole time is on paternity leave. And you just want to go, listen, man, I understand it's hard to raise a child, but isn't that supposed to be for the person who gave birth?
It's crazy. Yeah, you're right. Now
leave?
over 70 ships containing 500,000 containers are waiting off.
Pause it 1 second. Do men take paternity leave? Men are generally the primary group that take paternity leave. Paternity leave. Now, I'm not saying that we should discount everything that comes out of Joe Rogan's mouth after the fact that he doesn't understand that paternity leave is for the father.
Idiot.
Go backwards here. I mean, they're so desperate. And I got news for you. There's nothing that the transportation secretary can do at this juncture. These are local issues in terms of things being backed up at these ports. We can go into that in a bit, but
he tries to use the deductive reasoning, and he doesn't know anything, right?
Yeah.
Like, paternity leave, isn't that what?
Crazy is that Pete Buttigieg during this whole time is on paternity leave. And you just want to go, listen, man, I understand it's hard to raise a child, but isn't that supposed to be for the person who gave birth?
It's crazy. Yeah, you're right. Now
leave?
over 70 ships containing 500,000 containers are waiting offshore.
500,000.
But he was saying this,
Visualization
like this negative feedback loop that is rapidly cycling out of control, that if it continues unabated will destroy the global economy. I'm like, that's a nice one to just slide in there.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's complicated, but I do know the trucking stuff has something to do with it too, because there was already problems with truckers. They kind of abandoned California.
This is what it looked like 2 years ago. This is a visualization of like the data they used on a map.
So we're watching trucks
just
or ships come in.
Ships. You know, there's
just
like maybe
a couple
10.
ships. This is 2019.
And this is last week.
Why are there so many?
Because they're all
I mean,
stuck.
this is why.
Oh, that's why?
Yeah.
Because they're stuck?
Yeah, they're all floating around out here waiting to find space to come into there to go wait, and they can kind of get in there. Like you said, if there's only 7 out of hundreds of cranes emptying them, then they're waiting.
It's nuts.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
And that's why you can't buy toys.
And it's also affecting small businesses.
Yeah.
You know, it's just it definitely feels like a clusterfuck. And
Now,
I think.
but who's responsible? Is this like people are blaming Pete Buttigieg because of the fact that he's
why?
on paternity leave? They're saying he's the Secretary of Transportation. Does that
okay.
make any sense?
I'm not sure. I mean, that was a weird one because I never know in those stories. It's like, is this just like a partisan thing where you just
Right.
want to like yell at the guy because.
But it is kind of crazy he's on paternity leave. It is.
The craziest thing to me was the picture of them in the fucking hospital bed.
Yeah.
That's where I was like, women! Like, it's just like, you weren't in a hospital. I mean, maybe. I don't know if they were there for.
Yeah, maybe they were there for the baby. I mean, there's 2 options in terms of like why they might be in the hospital. One option is that they said, hey, now we've got this new baby, this newborn baby. Let's go to a hospital and take a photo of us in the bed. Let's go do that. Or the other option is maybe that's where they had a surrogate mom who delivered the baby, and the baby needs to stay in the hospital for a day or 2.
I like how it's instructive how Rogan returns to it and keeps trying to, right?
Push it. And
the guest.
This isn't the end of it either. I don't know if this is a longer clip. Maybe it's not clipped out. But he goes on and says, like, if you want to be in Germany, that's one thing. But this is America. You
well,
have to work there.
let's play that clip in a second. But the bottom line is that the answer is no. One person cannot fix this huge clusterfuck of logistics, and there are multiple reasons why we have that image of all of those boats that are basically in a holding pattern off the coast of Long Beach. And this is also not exclusive to Long Beach. This is at our ports. I think there's a big port down New Orleans that also has this issue, or Louisiana, I should say. The problems are the way that we spend our money is different right now. People aren't traveling in the same way. They're not going out in the same way. They're buying more stuff.
Yes.
15% more stuff. That's a significant bump.
Goods and less services and less travel.
Exactly.
Think of it like that.
Exactly. B, we have a shortage of truck drivers in this country. And so what's happening is they're getting backed up. They're so backed up with containers in the port that truckers, and they've opened it up 24 hours a day now to allow truckers to come in they're just not coming. And part of it is because the supply chain is all screwed up. So they can't figure out, there's not enough truckers, which I'm sure it's part of it. Are the warehouses full that the truckers would take it to? And perhaps they're full because there's some element that is missing for the construction of whatever it is. And so there's no point in getting more, sofa legs if you don't have the sofas.
People don't know which one of the dominoes is screwy right now in the domino.
I think they're all
chain.
screwy.
Yeah.
And then the problem they're having in Long Beach, they just changed the rules where you can stack the containers instead of 2 high, 4 high. We're going to hear about a horrible
injuries.
accident that's going to take place at this place. And so there's this whole confluence of different things. And they're starting to charge now. You can't leave containers on the dock for an extra $100. And there's some people in part of the supply chain that say that's going to help, others that say not. I mean, the bottom line is it's one of those classic, like, the snake eats the rat, and you can just see it like sort of like trying to pass its way through the body. That's what's going on here. Or it's that Pete Buttigieg took a picture with his baby in a hospital.
Yeah, and like if you want to make a point that Pete Buttigieg is a corny weirdo, I'm sympathetic to that. But like, of course, it needs to be. It's the way Rogan's doing it there. It's like coded in homophobia, and it's also interesting to me how all of his talking points are downstream from what we heard earlier in the week. What we covered earlier in the week about paternity leave.
Right.
First, it's Tucker, who makes the comment. Then who?
Crowder.
Then Crowder. Then Charlie Kirk.
Listen, if you come up with the premise that our supply chain issues, which of course have been happening for months and months. I mean, people remember what happened with lumber, right? I mean, we just have like all of a sudden a huge shift in consumption. And if you come up with the idea that this is even possibly a function of Pete Buttigieg being on paternity leave, aside from like maybe not understanding what the word paternity means.
Yeah.
Questioning like why a man would go on paternity leave. It indicates to me that your primary source of information is coming from Breitbart or Daily Wire or some other right wing, because
or Jimmy Dore. I forgot about that. Dore did this before. This is the same recycling project.
Wherever you're getting your news, it is quite clear that it is coming from right wing partisan sites at that point. And so, that's the problem. That's the problem with Rogan has always been his media consumption.
Yeah, and just to address why he had like Bernie and Cornel West on during the Bernie campaign, because it would have looked bad, one, if he didn't, and it's leaving attention on the table. That's why he did that. And we saw like his endorsement was basically paper thin, but if to the extent you have to elaborate an endorsement for any one of these vampires, of course you would pick Bernie.
Yeah, and I forget if I said this out loud already or if I was just thinking it, but did you see how the guests tried to return to like talking about the shipping?
Well, yeah. I think we should
multiple times, and he returned to it 3 times.
Let's try a little bit more, because I really want to get to this part where Joe says.
Okay, go.
Yeah.
Like it's like you weren't in a hospital. I mean, maybe I don't know if they were there for the
foot surgery.
For the birth, maybe the surrogate was, but it wasn't like they were in the hospital.
They were on the bed where women give birth.
Yeah,
it was like a birthing table. Yeah, see, that's what's weird.
Yeah, that was a little bit much for me.
But it's like, but here's the thing: one of you should do that. One of you should take care of the children. Like this idea that both parents should get maternity and paternity leave at the same time is a little weird.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I don't. Only
Why?
Because I have a German cousin and they get the shit. I mean, they get like a full year for the woman and 9 months for the husband.
That's great. You want to live in Germany? Because in America, you got to work. Like, here's the thing. If you have a small business, you're the one who loves small businesses, okay? Right?
Yeah.
Imagine.
No,
if
you
have
can't
an employee,
take paternity leave.
Imagine if you have an employee and this is your fucking CEO of your little company or whatever, and the wife has a baby and the husband's like, I'm taking 4 months off. You're like, what the fuck are you talking about? I need paternity leave. Like, he's been off since August.
That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, I think.
Yeah, imagine.
I could tell you as a small business owner, when Matt Binder's child was born, I believe. I think they gave him like 2 weeks off paid paternity leave. It's not 4 months. It's not Germany. If the government was to subsidize.
Yeah, the government should just subsidize.
Subsidized, I would have been. But obviously, like this small businesses are not held to the same obligation as larger companies are. But it's not just Germany, folks. It's every Western industrialized country in the world, at the very least. At the very least. at the very least, they all provide paternity leave. All of them.
12 weeks is the minimum?
I mean, just like, let's put it this way. You walk into a room, you meet somebody, and that person says, you know what? Every single person in this room is crazy. Everybody's crazy. They're all crazy.
Except for me.
Except for me.
Yeah.
They're all crazy.
I'm America.
I mean, does it not occur to him that, like, wait a second, if Germany can figure it out, and France can figure it out, and England can figure it out, and Sweden can figure it out, and Switzerland can figure it out, and Italy can figure it out, and we can just keep going on, and Spain can figure it out, and, you know, all of Canada can figure it out, and Australia can figure it out, and on and on. They can all figure it out, but in America, we're special. We don't have to figure it out because our families are magical. And
we got to work instead.
Yeah.
Well, like, okay, so look at how he sympathizes with bosses there, right? That's his number one impulse. Like, think about if you're a CEO.
You got to compel that new dad to work for you.
Yeah. Imagine you need that worker. You're the CEO. He needs to be making money for you, that father.
Your small business needs him more than his child does.
Yeah. I mean, come on. And then my other observation is love the mansplaining about all that to his female guest, but whatever. And then I guess the third thing I wanted to say about it was that the entire opposition to paternity leave on the right, which now I'm including Rogan in, there's also there's capitalist assumptions that I just laid out, but there's also this weird commitment to masculinity as entirely disconnected from emotion and fatherhood, where they see themselves again as like Don Draper in that episode where he goes back to work after his wife gives birth. I mean, they see their masculinity as inextricably tied to capitalism and their work and disconnected from family. And it's like this impulse that I can't understand, but basically you're not a real man if you don't want to be working and you want to be spending time with your kid. And that is such a pervasive, I think, theme in a lot of the way that these right-wingers have been framing this very topic, which is also why they're so homophobic about it, and they're very quick to use Pete Buttigieg as an example.
And can't understand what the word paternity leave means.
Yeah.
And of course, Germany, notorious for its slackers when it comes to work.
It's a totally unproductive nation.
Yeah.